this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
Body Bags with Joseph Scott Moore. Travel recommendation. If you have never seen the Cascades, get it on your list. You got to go. You have to go. The Rockies are fun, but there's something about being in the midst of the Cascade Range. You don't have to be in the midst of it. You can be miles and miles and miles and miles away from it and still kind of be in it. You can see them from such a great distance away. I remember the first time that I flew into Seattle and passed, I guess it's is at Mount Hood, I think, coming in over this thing, and I'd never seen anything like it in my life. It's amazing. And essentially they're snow-capped dormant volcanoes, but it's all the little hills that surround it as well, and those beautiful lush evergreen forests that go on like a carpet forever off into the distance. It is certainly a beautiful place, and it has a particular smell about it. When you're there underneath that canopy of evergreens, sometimes you can almost catch a hint of Christmas, even in the summertime. It's the pine, it's the cedars. But today, I want to talk about something that has come to my attention in the last 3 days, across my desk, actually the last 2 days. And it's a case that people have been talking about for a while, but there was really nothing there that I could hold forth on from a forensics perspective. Now, there is. I'm talking about the murders of 3 precious little angels, the Decker sisters. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags. Dave, I think the thing that so amazes me about the Cascades, and I know that geography nerds out there and probably people that live adjacent to them that are friends of ours out there, they're going to nail me on this, but the idea that they run for such a long distance, kind of up the spine of the West Coast, if you will. And a lot of people use the Cascade Range to escape. They escape for a number of reasons. We got several, not just two. We got major metropolitan centers along there. People, trying to earn a buck, they get away, they head east, head toward the Cascades and go camping. And our subject today, relative to the Decker sisters, revolves around their little family and the dad who was known to camp with some frequency. And this is up in Washington State,
right.
up toward the north in the Cascade Range. And
Travis
went off into the forest and never came back out alive.
Well, all right. Travis Decker, first of all, he's a 32-year-old guy who was in the military for an extended period of time. Kind of look at this and think, was he really planning on making a life career out of the military? Because he was in it for longer than the first hitch that you do coming out of like high school or college when you don't know what you're going to do. He was in longer than that. He was in it for 10, 12 years and then transfers over to the National Guard. But he's got these girls, he's got an ex-wife, and he has yet to find solid footing for himself. I don't know a better way to say it. As he and his ex-wife, dealt with custodial issues over the girls, she said, it's one thing to go camping as an outing. It's another if when you get the girls for a weekend, you're pitching a tent in the woods because you're homeless. And I think that is a legitimate question that has to be answered. That is not the environment that many of us would consider safe. And that was something that had happened as this was going on. So Travis he was homeless. He did camp in the woods. He didn't do it because he was an outdoorsy guy. He did it because he had a truck and that was it. So when he would get the girls, he would maybe sometimes stay in a hotel, sometimes not. And it got to the point where he did not get the kind of visitation that he wanted. And it had kind of devolved into that. So when he comes to pick the girls up, May 30th was a planned visitation. And I don't know, we don't know all the ins and outs. We don't know everything that happened. We only know what cards he showed. And he did pick up the girls for a planned visitation. They were supposed to go to appear at a 5K run. A lot of times they'll have a 5K run in your community, and it's a whole day event where, you have cookouts and things like that and lots of activities. And so that's what they were going to do. A nice family fun time. Yeah. But they never showed up there. And when Travis Decker did not show up with the girls, we're talking about Paityn Decker is 9, Evelyn is 8, and Olivia is 5. These are some very active ages. A 5-year-old can keep you busy.
Yeah.
A 5-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 9-year-old can make you shave your head because of the bald patches you're pulling out. So
yes,
he has all 3 of these girls, and he doesn't bring them back when he was supposed to. As this had been an ongoing issue, his ex-wife did not tolerate it. She was on the phone with police fairly quickly, and they did not come back. So it wasn't where he was supposed to have them for a week and they waited 10 days. Okay. It wasn't like that, Joe. He picks them up May the 30th. Within 48 hours, there's an all points bulletin. We don't know where he is. We don't know where the girls are. Have you seen this man? Have you seen these girls? All over the Pacific Northwest. So that's kind of the setting that we start with in this case. They did find a campsite where Travis Decker took his girls. I've seen pictures of this campsite, Joe. Yeah. And full disclosure, Joe was talking to me about this last night because you've done some appearances on networks that you've delved into this and you have some information about what took place. The pictures showed a fairly lived-in camping area. It wasn't just a place he pitched a tent overnight with the girls. He'd been living in this area for a good long while. There were signs of trash and things like that you don't accumulate in a 24-hour period of time, but over weeks. So they've tracked him to this area that he was camping with the girls, his homeless shelter, if you want to call it that, and they found bags. Like I use Dollar General as an example because if you live in the South, I guess it's a Southern thing. I don't know, but we got a Dollar General every quarter mile. I think you have to have one. It's the law. Yeah. Next to the Alexander Shannara lawyer signs, call me Alabama. So
there's even a postseason college football bowl named the Dollar General Bowl. So
I love it. Yeah. And so we have these Dollar General bags. They're just general use. And they found bags like that all over this campsite, a lot of them, and twist ties and other things that just didn't seem to have a lot of value in a camping area. And if you were camping, now, if you're living, it's a different matter altogether. When you're camping, you take stuff in you have a bundle, you have a backpack, you have a bedroll, and you keep these things organized because you're going to take them back home. When you're living in the woods, not so much. It's a much different environment. And that's what this setting was. So when they come looking for the girls, Joe, or trying to find Travis Decker, they had no idea what they were going to find. They did not think the girls were in danger of life and death. They thought that they were with a dad who had come a bit unhinged, maybe.
Yeah, my understanding, Dave, is that it had gotten so precarious, I think, with his living situation. It's like every other weekend, he got them for 8 hours, unsupervised. And then I think he could come by the house and see them at specific times, but they had to remain at the house. Where else are you going to go? I mean, I guess you could go out to the park. And look, man, different circumstances happen. We've got homeless vets all over this country. Yep. Sadly. That are, very sadly, that are suffering from all manner of maladies. Much of it goes right to the feet of the VA, where, they don't take care of our troops. They're discarded and they don't get them the help they should. But, it's a two-way street too. I know I've got good friends that have issues that came up, during the, the war footing that we were on, and were, in that situation for a long time. They paid a price for it. But, their effort to get help hinged heartily upon the amount of pressure that they were applying, and being present for, all the meetings and, getting your meds and all this stuff. And look, from what I understand, Travis Decker did have medication that he was supposed to be on for the psychopathology that he has been diagnosed with, which I think from an overarching standpoint, the diagnosis is actually PTSD, and PTSD can manifest itself in a variety of different ways. But there were some underlying things too that had developed, and reports are that he would not take these medications that he had been given. But, and that's on him. He has to take those meds if he's seeking the treatment. If you want to go get other treatment outside the VA, fine, but you got to do something to help yourself, or you're not going to be in a position where you can be a daddy, which, to me is the most esteemed position in the world. I don't care what it is. I wouldn't trade anything for being a daddy.
So Travis Decker takes off and doesn't come back with the girls, Joe. And they find his campsite fairly quickly. Didn't take long. 3 days in, really 2 days of looking. And on June the 2nd, they found his campsite. And what they found was beyond anything anybody thought they were going to find. Worst case scenario showed up in their face.
Yeah, it did. And this is the way that I would envision this when you are a law enforcement officer and you show up at a remote location like this. The things that they saw upon their arrival and their discovery there wasn't just evidence that Travis Decker had indwelled that location. It looked as though Satan himself had paid a visit. Where? That's the biggest question when you've got missing children. Where are they? You want to see them. You want to be able to examine them. You want to be able to know that they're okay. I've talked about this before, Dave, in some of our previous conversations about one of the responses I get from families when they're notified of deaths is, contrary to what people think, they don't ask what happened most of the time. Most of the people, particularly their intimates, the first question out of their mouth is, where are they? Where are they? Even though you've told them that they're deceased, most people cannot accept the fact that someone is deceased. Their brain goes to this idea of where, because where gives them an indication of the location they need to go to in order to verify it for themselves. There's part of us in our core that are all from Missouri. You got to show me.
Oh,
you got to show me. You got to show me. You have to demonstrate to me, because you've never known, most people have never known life without those that they love. And then when it happens, they want to be able to verify it with their eyes. And so therefore, what happened is kind of down the list from that, because they're not even if you tell them what happened, they're not going to believe you because you're a total stranger. Now, some people might just sit there and say, oh, okay, well, that happened. The lion's share of people are not going to do that. They want to verify everything for themselves. And look, I understand completely. I know. And matter of fact, families want to touch the bodies. Isn't that something? It's almost like if you've ever seen a mama dog where she loses a pup out of a litter, and other animals do this too, they'll nuzzle the deceased animal the deceased pup or calf or whatever, just to verify. It's a tactile thing where they're verifying that this child is no more. And the same is here, for David. We're talking about back in May is when they're last seen. As of this taping, we're into August of 2025 now, like significantly into August. Okay. This search had gone on for a bit, and then there's been lingering questions ever since this horrible discovery out there.
Well, you mentioned the mountains, Joe, and this guy, he embedded, he was living in the woods using a truck for cover at times, but there have been a lot of spottings of him possibly being seen here or there, but it's a big forest. It's a lot of area to cover. And I do not want this to come off wrong, Joe.
Yeah. But
they were looking for the three girls. I mean, granted, they care about Travis Decker, but when they were they're searching for the girls. They just, give me the girls, do what you're a grown man. When on June 2nd, they go to the campsite, they find where they knew where he had been, and they find the girls, Joe. They don't find Travis Decker. And that's when the search changes. They're not looking for a man trying to disguise three girls and set up shop somewhere else in the country. He has murdered his daughters in the woods. And we haven't been given the details of what was found at the campsite other than Decker's not here and the girls are gone. The girls are dead. So tell me, because the search is still ongoing. We still don't have Travis. I mean, you're thinking about a country that, to be honest with you, the government's probably listening to us right now. If you and I start talking about axe handles while we record this on our Facebook feed, we're going to see commercials today for axe handles. So how does a person, a 32-year-old man who is having mental issues, how does he stay gone like this? How does he stay hidden?
Walks away from everything. His vehicle was found, and him and his vehicle were essentially married together. Let's face it, I don't know about you. I've spent the night in my car before. Now I can't imagine what it would be like to live in a car for a protracted period of time. There are people that do it. They do it all the time. All you got to do is go to LA and drive up and down the road. You'll see them pulled up on the sidewalk, one of the saddest things you've ever seen. But people do it. They survive that way. We think about that little precious baby up there, and where was it, New Hampshire, where that monster had her.
Harmony Montgomery.
Harmony that monster had her and the other sibling and the girlfriend. I think 3 siblings or 2. I can't remember, but that little baby was living in a Chrysler Sebring, which are convertibles up in the Northeast. People will live in these environments. So the fact, I think, from an investigative standpoint, Dave, is very significant that this vehicle has been left behind. And my understanding is there was a wallet found in the vehicle. So if you leave your wallet behind, you don't know if he doesn't have the means to have a home. So how much cash could he have on him? He walks out of this place, leaving the car behind and leaving 3 murdered angelic little darlings, there in that forest. You know what else was left behind, Dave? You talk about a dichotomy. His dog was left, and the dog is alive. Now you compare, if we were to put that on scales, okay, the lives of your children that you couldn't have on a regular basis. You probably think you know where I'm going here, and you got the dog that has been living with him, and that dog is still alive, but yet you snuff out these 3 precious lives of your children. That's a Karen with a C comment there. Karen Stark, our friend, forensic psychologist. I don't even know how to begin to kind of unpack that. How you can dehumanize these precious souls and you spare the dog. I don't really get that. I don't understand it. I think that probably one of the most significant pieces that's very puzzling to me about this triple homicide of the Decker sisters is the idea that you're trying to find evidence of maybe, just maybe, what had actually happened there. And this is kind of significant. There was actually bloody handprints that were found on, I think it was the tailgate of that truck.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what, you mentioned he left his vehicle behind, this pickup truck, which had been, they said it wasn't operational. Whatever was going on with it, the truck had died and he left it there. He didn't get it repaired. Again, he's homeless, for crying out loud. But when they get there, he's gone. You mentioned the dog is there. I was thinking, in my weird way of thinking, I thought that the dog, when he saw what was going on with the girls, dogs are not stupid. And that maybe the dog was problematic for him. Maybe the dog was not allowing him to do what he was trying to do. And maybe he did something that scared the dog away, where he ran away. And then when Decker left, he came back, like maybe to protect the girls. That sounds crazy, but that was one of the many thoughts in my head.
All manner of things. I've got a newly acquired part Chihuahua that Kim and I rescue dogs. That's our thing. We go to kill shelters to get them, and we've got 3 right now. And the latest one that we have her name's Frenchie, and she's part Chihuahua. And every time I come up to the door, if she could rip my head off, she would. But once I get in there, she's wagging her tail. She alerts to things, she sees things, and and she'll crawl back up in Kim's lap. Meanwhile, I've got, a 40-pound lab that crawls up into my lap, and I sit there and pet her.
Wow.
But dogs are interesting that way. And they're part of, dogs are part of families. And that's an interesting idea that you put forward there, Dave. Did the dog run away? Did he shoo the dog off? What exactly happened? Why would you abandon the dog? And there was also food left behind in the vehicle. But the blood on his hands, or the bloody handprints, which, by the by, DNA testing turned out that this is his blood, and typing in DNA.
Well, wait a minute. It was Travis Decker's blood?
I think it was, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we know we have 3 children, 5, 8, and 9, who are dead.
Yeah.
And we know there's twist ties and zip ties and bags all over the place. Now we've got bloody handprints.
Yeah.
I'm curious as to how did he kill the girls? Do we know that? Do we know how he killed?
Yeah, we do.
Or wait a minute, allegedly killed the girls. He's a suspect. He's not convicted. He hasn't gone to trial.
Right. He is a suspect at this point in time. And as a matter of fact, the police are actually stating he is the sole suspect. They're not looking at anybody else at this point. And kind of let me break this down for you and let you know what I think. Or what I know, at least at this point in time. These babies were found, and at first they said it was one, but apparently now it's all of them, Dave. Had their little wrist bound with zip ties. Just let that sink in just for a second. We see these, police officers and people in the military that are, doing dynamic entries and all that sort of thing, and they don't have cuffs with them. They'll use zip tie cuffs, and you can fashion a zip tie cuff, kind of a simple one, just out of a couple of zip ties. So their hands are bound. That means that you can't use them. I know that's, gee, Morgan, that's kind of obvious. Thanks for the insight. No, that's important when you begin to think about the causal effects of these babies' deaths. Because, Dave, their deaths have been ruled as a suffocation deaths. And we got to go back to the Dollar General bags that you mentioned. Not that these are Dollar General bags,
right,
but some facsimile thereof. If you're talking about, some bag that they got at Ralph's or whatever the local, grocery store is, or wherever they came from, you've got these bags that have been utilized as a weapon. So these weaponized plastic bags, what do they always tell us as we're young parents about plastic bags and babies? Keep them away. Well, there's a lot of stuff I don't agree with that comes out from various medical journals and all. That's one I happen to agree with. You don't leave a plastic bag in, say, a crib with a baby. You don't let older You don't let kids play with plastic bags. The worst ones for years and years, believe it or not, Dave, were dry cleaning bags, because a kid could put their whole body in these things. All right.
Oh, wow.
And they're not, most of the time, they're not permeable. That means that they don't breathe, is what I'm saying. So you're not going to, it's not like, not that this would be great, but it's not like it's a burlap sack over your head.
Right.
Where you got little spaces where you might be able to uptake a bit more oxygen. No. This is sealed. And Dave, it wasn't, here's the other piece that we have found out. Two, and they haven't said which ones yet, two of these babies had been double bagged over their heads. A third one was triple bagged.
What?
Yeah, triple bagged. So if you guys know what Dave and I are talking about with, if you go to any grocery store and they give you plastic bags, they're good for about from moving your groceries from the trunk of your car, from the bed of your truck into the house. And after that, the structural continuity of these things breaks down really quick. So and I was giving this some thought, before you and I were going to chat today, brother. And I was thinking he was kind of, if he is the one that did this, he's kind of triple checking everything, checking the boxes. This goes to intent, right? Mm-hmm. He's got these things he's doing. He knows that the bags will break, so he's got to get more than one there. And the way this happens is this becomes, I'd said suffocation. This is truly what's referred to as an oxygen deprivant event. So when you enclose anybody into a small space like that, and it's sealed, and a bag is a small space, there's very little room in there for oxygen at all. As a matter of fact, you'll have more before you have your head stuck in it, because the mass of your head displaces the oxygen that's in there. So it kind of runs it out. Then you hold that bag in place, and at some point in time, and it's pretty quickly, you begin rebreathing your own expelled air, which of course is carbon dioxide, and it's lethal. It's not merely the fact that you're absent oxygen. It's now you're uptaking carbon dioxide, and it makes people very, very, very sleepy and that sort of thing. However, one of the problems is that, and unless these girls were drugged in some way, Dave, they would have an awareness, because the primal brain kicks in and you begin struggling, you begin fighting. And let's just talk about this just for a second, as uncomfortable as this makes people feel. Just think, anytime you've ever had something on your face, all right, the one reaction is not to walk over to a wall and rub the item off of your face. All right. You get, I don't know, you get jelly on your beard, you're eating toast, or, you get a fly on your forehead. You walk through a cobweb, which unfortunately I seem to do more than any other human on the face of the planet. Your reaction is to draw your hands up and pull it away. Well, guess what was done to them? They couldn't fight. Those little wrists, and very tiny wrists, by the way, were essentially cuffed with these zip ties, and they are restrained at this point. That would indicate that this was not done post-mortem. Okay. Why are you going to zip tie the hands of the deceased? Well, you don't. You restrain them. What type of person, Dave? What type of person looks into the eyes of their child and says, "Give me your wrist, put your hands behind your back," and you hear that very distinctive sound of that zip tie being clicked, click, 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 as it becomes more and more tight around the circumference of both of the wrists. And did he say, "Hey girls, let's play a game"? Is that how he enticed them to do it? I don't know, but I do know this. Based upon the information the police have just released, it seems that more and more the evidence is pointing toward Daddy. Most of the time when we think about homicides, at least for me, even me at this stage in my career, you automatically think of a level of violence that's observable. You know, someone beaten to death, someone shot to death, someone stabbed to death, someone stomped to death, someone run over intentionally by a car, someone thrown off of a house. But you know, many times homicides can occur in very passive ways. You know, recently, Dave, you and I covered the mushroom lake, you know, down in Australia. And that's kind of a passive homicide. It's a poisoning. We've had other poisonings that we've covered. But Dave, I submit to you that this is, it's a very passive form with a little bit of violence kicked in at the end, because you have to, if you're there while this is going on, and the perpetrator would have had to have been there, you're going to bear witness to struggles that most of us can't even begin to imagine. And these three little angels experience that at this very young age.
Joe, I'm curious as to the planning that went into this from Decker's standpoint. And the reason is, he had been abiding by the restrictions of the visitation, which was 8 hours at a time unsupervised, where he had to stay within the town limits. And then he could come over for 4 hours, you know, at a stretch there at the house or what have you. And he had been abiding by that. He had been living by the rules, and his ex-wife said everything was fine. He seemed to be doing well with that. But the fact that he got them on the 30th and they were expecting a return as normal, and it didn't happen. But when they, you know, went to where he had been, where they located his campsite that he had been staying, as we mentioned earlier, we're not talking a long period of time. It wasn't like he had a plan to take the girls and leave. He had a plan to kill the girls, because when they got there June 2nd, they found 3 dead little girls, ages 9, 8, and 5. And that means to me that he went out, the whole thing was planned ahead of time. I don't know how quickly he killed them. Had they been able to determine that? Had they determined, did he beat them? Did he torture them? What did he do to these girls? I mean, suffocating? Okay, well, cuffing their hands. All right. Zip tying their hands so they can't move. He's binding them. I don't know how you bind 3 girls. I mean, they're not easy.
You'd have to bind them individually.
Yeah.
Can I take you back just
Please.
for a moment? Because I know that he is an Army veteran, right. And I'm still unclear. I've heard people make comments, and I have yet to be able to kind of verify it for myself solidly, because people can say any number of things. All you got to do is look at our episode of the Montauk boat death there, and all kinds of crazy things get said. But let me just throw this out to you. If at any point in time he went through survival, escape, and evasion, and resistance and evasion training, one of the things they do, and they put you in a mock POW situation, they put a bag over your head and they bind you with zip ties. And that's part of the training, and whether or not he went through the training or not, it's in a wilderness setting. I know the special operations in the Army, they at Bragg, they go through robin sage, which is part of their training. They have to negotiate and all those sorts of things, learning how to do that. And the special operators also have to go through SEER training, which is it's pretty tough. It's some of the toughest training you have to go through, because you have to withstand interrogations and all that. And that idea of depriving an individual of movement and also their senses, like you don't know where sounds are coming from. You can't see anything. Now, I don't know if that was kind of imprinted in his brain. Maybe he thought that was an expeditious way to end life. But I submit to you that he's at least aware of that. Well, and that he chose this, and chose, allegedly, if he is the perpetrator, left them out in those woods. I don't know. That's part of it that that I was thinking about all along, because I don't know what his level of training exposure was.
Let me help you understand that then. His military training, when you go onto social media and you see other people that he was in the service with and the commonality that they have, Decker had advanced infantry combat training. He was an airborne paratrooper who earned his elite ranger tab. That means he has elite wilderness evasion training and survival skills. Those are a couple of the things that let you know. He also had different profiles that he talked about being a qualified instructor in other issues of warfare, being training out alone, I guess is kind of what I'm after here. But we've got a guy who knows the wilderness, is living in the wilderness, as a way of life now, as a homeless vet. Yep. And he has killed his girls, allegedly killed his girls with proper planning. It's not like he was trying to get away with them. He took them out to the woods to end their life and then did not take his own. He just took off running. Is it the idea? I mean, this goes back to Karen Stark and Bethany, but, was it, well, if I can't have my girls all the time, nobody can? I mean,
I don't know. The first things I thought of, it's kind of like the shunned lover, if you will, that comes back and, they just brutalize somebody that they perceive has rejected them or maybe did reject them, and they're going to destroy them. Oh. Well, and why exactly would he go after the girls and not after the mother?
Right. Would little girls have more of an ability to suffocate quickly, or would it take them longer to suffocate?
Well, they've got less. Yeah. They've got less lung capacity, man. And plus, you got a grown ass man with military training that has probably got significant grip strength. He can, and this is another thing I'm curious about. How did he secure the bags? Because this is kind of ghastly. If you put those bags over their heads, you can secure them on the neck. You can do it with tape. You can do it with another zip tie. You can hold it in place. And if you can't move your hands to remove the bag, the situation will take care of itself momentarily. All right. Did he do that? Which they didn't say anything about anything around the neck. They just said bags over the head. That implies to me, Dave, that he held those bags in place one by one. Now, what was going on with the other kids that were still alive? When the first one dies, did he take her off and kill her separately away from, now you girls sit here, I'm going to go off with Sissy over here. Okay. Kills her there, then takes the next one, so forth and so, or did he kill them in front of one another? I know your mind can go to all these different places. Another thing that you would have evidence of would be in their own little way. There would be a mighty struggle. So you would see evidence on the ground of not just these kind of scuffed footprints where they're resisting. You can see marks on the ground where they would struggle with their entire body kind of rolling. And somebody that's a trained observer of these kinds of things, it certainly wouldn't be me. I've had them pointed out to me at scenes, but I'm no tracker or anything like that. It's amazing what these people can recreate, and tell you the story by just the marks on the ground. It's amazing. That may have taken place there. And that soil, if you've ever been into the Cascade Range, that soil is very loamy. It's, you're shielded from sunlight lots of times if you're inside that canopy. It almost looks like twilight, beneath that canopy of those trees. And the ground's very soft. There might still be evidence of that they picked up. I'm wondering about his footprints, because they're going to be significantly, obviously, larger than these babies.
What about the DNA, Joe? Where did they find it? Where did they find DNA from the girls and him?
Here's the other piece to this, Dave, that's so freaking disturbing. They found the DNA on the zip ties. Okay, so that tells me that he's not wearing gloves. Because if it's direct contact onto a zip tie, and just look at a zip tie. If you got one in your drawer or in your toolbox or whatever laying around the house, just look at the surface of it. There's not a lot of surface area. And so intensely manipulating these things, which you would have to do because I'm blind as a bat. I have a really difficult time finding a location where you insert it and then zip it. It's kind of like threading a needle many times. That requires incredible concentration, and you're holding it. You tend to hold things tighter like that, and you're trying to manipulate them. So he would have pulled the tab if he's doing this barehandedly, he has to anchor with one hand, pull with the other, pull it through, and secure it down. Found that, and the DNA, there's also his DNA, and this is per the police, his DNA on the bags as well. So this is going to rule out some third party that may have had something. And I don't think that, we've talked about touch DNA in the past, Dave, where, that's the sloughing of the skin cells that falls away. I don't think this is a passive thing. Okay. I think that there's a probability that, a couple of things. We know that the bloody handprints, okay, did he cut himself doing something? That could transfer onto the bag. Also, there's the element of sweat. People don't realize how DNA rich sweat is. And if you're struggling with your own child as they are restrained below you, you're having to hold that bag in place. I would imagine he would begin to sweat somewhat. And here's the other thing. When you grip, think about let's just say you've got something valuable that's on a table that approximates the size of a human head. I don't know, like a vase. I'm sorry for all my fancy friends out there, a vase. And you're trying to cover this thing in a bag. You're not necessarily just going to take the bag and hold it externally and pull it down. You'll wrap your hands around the inside of it and kind of grab it with a fist and pull it down. And then you'll take it and maybe tie it or put something else around it to secure it. Okay. I think his DNA could potentially be on the exterior and the interior of the bag. And a lot of that's going to be coming from the sweat that's dripping off of his body, or maybe the blood that they found on the blood thing is still a mystery. That we know that they had dogs out there. I don't know, because, you're thinking wilderness, you're thinking blood, you're thinking dogs. Did he have blood that trailed off after him as he's wandering off into the forest? I don't know. There's a lot of unanswered questions. I think, and this is kind of even more hopeless, if this thing could be any more hopeless. I think that there is a possibility that he may no longer be with us. He may have wandered off, and either if he had a weapon with him, and this guy's highly trained, he doesn't have to have a physical weapon with him to end himself. He could have wandered off and done any number of things out there. And this place is so vast. Now, I'm not saying, nobody misconstrue what I'm saying. I'm not saying this is the actual location where this happened. But all we got to do is think about D.B. Cooper.
Right.
D.B. Cooper came out of that airplane, and no one saw hide nor hair of him.
Yeah.
And we know that he had parachute. He had all that cash. They think they found some of the cash embedded in a riverbed. I don't know if that was the Columbia or wherever it was, but you're still talking about the same kind of forested area like this. The earth just swallows things up.
How long, Joe? I mean, look, you actually have mentioned to me, we have had a common character in our world, Eric Robert Rudolph, the Olympic Park bomber in Atlanta, who also bombed an abortion clinic in Birmingham. And, he stayed gone for a long time. There was thoughts that maybe he had offed himself somewhere and things like that, but he actually was caught while he was in the midst of staying gone. How was he caught? How did they track him?
I don't know. They had whole teams of people, and I was part of that investigation, the Olympic Park bombing, and not that I had any grand insight into anything. My focus was on the victim, who happened to be a school teacher that was, there in Olympic Park that night to hear the concert. It was Jack Mack and the Heart Attack. I'll never forget it. They were performing on the band and on the stage, and if you go back and look at that video, you see people, the classic videos, people seeing the stage, and all of a sudden they react to the blast. They kind of look back to their right, and that's when the blast went off at that tower. And it was constructed kind of like it's hard to describe if you've never been in the military, but an anti-personnel mine called a claymore that kind of spreads out in a big fan. He'd used this really shows my age. He used a backpack that the military used to carry back in my day. It's called an Alice pack. And so he had packed it with all manner of stuff, bits of concrete. There were roofing nails, metal screws, everything. And so Alice Hawthorne was her name. I'll never forget that. She caught one of those screws in the corner of her eye, and it embedded in her cerebellum. It traveled, to the back of her brain and killed her right there. She also has blast injuries to her arms. And we wanted to know, I remember back then, we wanted to know who had done this. And immediately, in the aftermath of this, unfortunately, one of my favorite law enforcement heroes of all time, Richard Jewell, the feds pointed the finger at him. And one of the most tragic stories in modern America. And I submit to you that he died as a result of having to go through that trauma. Watch that movie, by the way, if anybody's ever, the Clint Eastwood movie about Richard Jewell. He was a very nice man. I met him a couple occasions before he finally died.
Wow.
And, they wanted to point the finger at him. He actually saved lives.
Wow.
Because he started moving people away from the device. He saw it. Richard saw it. He was doing his job. He was moving people away. Probably would have had more people die. And the bag got reoriented, and the blast kind of went up instead of out. If that bag had stayed in its original position, I think that we could have had hundreds. And people forget about all the folks that were damaged that night too. There are people that still are dealing with scars and maladies that arose from that evening. But anyway, back to Eric Rudolph. He had headed out for North Georgia and the western North Carolina mountains, made his way up there. And Dave, it was, I can't remember the exact amount of time, but I know that the U.S. Marshals poured their resources into it, the FBI. I'd even heard rumors at one point in time that certain elements were deployed from the military to aid in search. And these are people that are highly trained. And they could never turn anything up. And it just goes to show you never know how life is going to work out, because he was found in the back, I think it was like a 7-Eleven, in the middle of the night in this little town that's just right over the Georgia-North Carolina border up into the mountains in North Carolina, dumpster diving. And, deputy that night was on patrol. I think it was a Sunday night, pitch black. And he sees this guy in the back of the dumpster. And I might be getting the story all messed up at this point in time. It's been so many years, but he confronts this guy. And the guy looks at him and says, "I'm Eric Rudolph." Can you imagine?
Wow.
I mean, everybody, the most skilled people in the world have been looking for this guy coming to the mountains. And this deputy in this little town up there, happens to come across this guy. You never know what's going to happen. You never know what's going to happen with Travis Decker. I don't know that he will ever be found. I know that they have, and this sadly, I know that the government has pulled back some of the resources at this point. I don't know what that's an indication of. Some thought that he was headed over into Idaho and was going to try to cross the border. People have thought that maybe he was going to try to cross the border into Canada through Idaho, and that little sliver up there that, runs that distance on our common border there. I don't know that we will ever find him. But I can tell you this. The world, I can almost assuredly tell you, is a much, much darker place absent these three precious little souls. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.